Jenna came to the Kill This Plant Discord looking for some help with her pothos and philodendrons. Originally, she had asked for help on Reddit, and that was a huge mistake. While I do love Reddit, and there's so many helpful communities on there, one of the biggest problems with the platform is people just don't ask enough questions. Jenna wanted to know what a good soil mix was for her pothos and philodendrons, and someone suggested orchid mix. And while I don't necessarily agree that orchid mix would be the best, and I have made a video on what soil mixes I recommend and I have used in the past, if someone had just asked her, why do you want to know? We could have avoided this whole mess. Because what Jenna really wanted to do was switch 100% of her soil medium into something new. And I hope Reddit would have said that this was a pretty bad idea. Plant roots are highly sensitive and generally they do not like to be disturbed. I'm sure you've seen me uprooting, disturbing, and even destroying some Monstera roots, but I can assure you they don't like that. Monstera roots are extremely hardy and they can handle this much better than other plants, but that doesn't mean that they like it. A 100% soil swap on your plant should almost never be done unless leaving your plant alone means certain death. For example, if you had a severe pest infestation in your soil, like root mealybugs or thrips, or if your plant is currently suffering from root rot that's eventually going to kill it. Plants don't like having their old soil removed, so avoid it if you can. Like with most things, there's a lot of nuance, and the answer is usually it depends. When it comes to switching out your soil, whether you want to call it transplant shock or just stress, when a plant is not rooted well, it generally has issues with water uptake. One of the easiest ways we can mitigate these stressors when it comes to indoor plants is light. If your roots have the right balance of oxygen and water, increasing your light within reason will ease your plant's stress. On our Discord server, we have a full written resource of what app suggestions or standalone devices you can buy, as well as exactly how much light your individual plant needs to be successful. Let me show you with one of my plants that a full soil switch can be done if you're accounting for the other factors that gave Jenna so many issues. I really didn't want to go out and buy my own orchid mix or orchid soil, so I'm just going to make my own. It's basically orchid bark, these cocoa chunks, and a little bit of sphagnum moss. I think it's going to be close enough. So swapping out 100% of the soil can work, but it's generally not the best idea. I'm going to use this pothos as an example. I think it's a pothos enjoy. But basically, this used to be in a pretty standard mix of potting soil, perlite. There's some orchid bark and some large perlite chunks, but really not that many. So now I have all my roots ready to go into this new pot, and while it's going to do a much better job of making sure that the roots get more oxygen, going from such a dense medium to something so light and so airy could be a difficult transition for this plant because the roots are going to have a really hard time of holding on to water. So it's going to make me have to water this plant much more frequently, probably every other day, if not every day. This is not quite topped up, so I'm gonna add a little bit more orchid bark and cocoa coir chips. I think this repot is good enough for now. I'll have to water it as soon as I'm done, but if you want to avoid the stress of a repot like this, here's what I suggest. When you're looking to completely change your medium, especially if you're going from something extremely dense to something very light, I would suggest changing around 25% of your medium every single time. So that means use 25% of your new soil mixed with your old soil. So that means your soil that currently looks like this needs to transition to where you want it to be, looking more like this. So first, you'll have to mix something like this together, then this, then this, then this. This is a much more conservative and safer way to transition your plants. It'll make it much easier on you and your plant's roots, and this is the advice that I gave to Jenna. As soon as Jenna posted in our Discord, it immediately reminded me of this post, and people had a very strong reaction to it. In an attempt to help this plant that didn't really seem to need any help to begin with, not only did they decide to go down to a smaller pot, they also untangled every single individual vine, rearranged them, and then put them back in the same pot. Which is wild to me. Like, who could have given them the idea that rearranging every single stem in your pot was a good idea? I mean, it's not like I personally have made any kind of videos that are showing you how to do that or like encouraging that in any way.
We're all trying to find the guy who did this.
I have no idea who could have given them that thought. Larger plants like monsteras can stand up to a lot of abuse. Their roots are much bigger, they're more difficult to break, and they have an easier time settling back into their pot, especially if you're only working with like 2 or 3 stems. But you can't get away with this with a much smaller vining plant like a Philodendron hederaceum, where the roots are much thinner, and they don't benefit visually from this kind of rearranging. Let me show you what I mean. These are 2 plants that have been growing outdoors in the same lighting conditions for the same amount of time. They were both potted on the same day, and if you take a look at the Monstera, you can see how thick the roots are. They're growing in every direction possible, peeking through the soil. Even an aerial root is trying to escape from the top. But if you take some time to look at this golden pothos, roots are much harder to see. They're significantly thinner. And while they are really healthy and growing along the bottom sides and all around of the pot, there's significantly less growth, and where there is growth, it's a lot thinner. I think it all boils down to us just doing too much, which is strange because waiting and patience is kind of hard-coded into this plant hobby. But it's okay to make mistakes, they're still just plants. We're all guilty of it, and kudos to this person for being brave enough to show their mistake online, even if they did get ripped a little bit in the comments. And as proof that we all just need to stop doing so much, Luciana asked for help with this monstera that got roasted in a van during a summer move. My advice to them was just to water the plant when it was dry, and other than that, do nothing. Luciana did nothing, and they were rewarded in kind. Some of the commenters on that Reddit thread were just straight up jerks, so if you have a plant question and you don't want to get laughed at for making a mistake, consider joining our Discord community. And then you can help us water our pet tree. His name is Tim, he's super tall, and he's in outer space now.